This is section 1.5, which covers standard dial calipers. Dial calipers are always everyone's favorite to read because they're pretty fast to read, pretty easy to read, and you can actually get a lot of different measurements from a dial caliper. So here's an example of a dial caliper, one we would have used in class. So I want you to pay attention. There's two different markings. There's measurements on the top, measurements on the bottom. So the measurements on the top are for metric, so we'll get to that in another video in section 1.7 talking about reading the metric scales. But for now, we're looking at the bottom line. This bottom line right here, this is the line that we read for inches. So we're going to be in inches. It's also going to be in decimals, which is another thing that people like because traditionally when we read standard, it's going to be fractions. The other thing I want to point out is there is a dial here. And so it's actually reading the measurement between the two measurements on the line. So here's kind of like our major scale here. And notice that these are not exactly on these numbers. So it's reading where it is in between those two numbers on the line. So it's giving us a more accurate picture of what we're seeing than a tape measure or a ruler. So again, I also want you to note that we have a decimal. We're out to 3 decimal place values on this, just like we were with a micrometer. So again, we're adding the two decimals together to see what we have for our final answer. So the first thing that I see is I'm under an inch. Okay, when I get to an inch, these bigger numbers are inches, then I'll have a whole number to put in front of my decimal. But as long as you're less than 1, you're going to use a 0 as your whole number. And again, that's optional, but I think it helps to keep things straightened out. So it's 0. And then I have to decide between the 4 and the 5. So it's 4, almost a 5, because I'm looking at my scale. If it were on the 0 or past the 0 to the right, it would be a 5. Since it's before, it's almost to the 5, but not quite. So it's 0.4. And then I'm going to use the dial to fill in the last two decimal places. So if you read this, it's pointing at the 97. So it's 0.497, and again, this is still in inches. Okay, so now we've moved a little bit further to the right on the scale. So you're looking right where this yellow piece is pointing, right? So it's pointing right at the 7. And I know it's actually on the 7 and not still on the 6 because as I look at my dial here, it's past the 0, just barely past the 0. So this time I'm after that whole number, so I have to use the 1. And then now the 0.7, and then I can put my dial reading in. So remember, it's not a 2, it's a 0, 2. 20 would be over here, okay? So if I put my 2 right after the 7, it'd be in the 20 range, which puts it here. This is 0, 2. So again, you want your digits to line up with the last one. So we have 0, 2 inches. Okay, so be really careful with those. These are commonly missed types. Okay, here's the next one. Again, we're reading the bottom. So I've gone past the 2 this time. And I'm between the 4 and the 5, so it's 4. And then I'm reading this piece right here, which is going to give me, let's see, 5, 8. Okay. So this one right here, again, the bottom, so I've got 3. And then I'm between the 5 and the 6, so 5. And then I've got 7. Here's my 7, 5. The 5's always kind of pushed down a little bit, and then it's right on that 7, 6. Okay. Let's see, this next one right here, we've got 4 as our whole number, point, and then I'm just after the 3, so 3, and I'm going to read the scale, and that's going to be 37. Okay, next we have this one right here. I'm at 0, I'm not at 1 inch yet, and I haven't even gotten to the 1 yet, so I'm at still 0. So all I'm going to do is read the dial for this one in particular. So I'm at 65. Okay, while we're looking at this piece right here, I think you can get a pretty good idea of what it looks like. This is a closed piece right here. What's nice about a micrometer is that, a caliper, is that you actually can measure a lot more things. So as you move this back and forth, there's a little rotating circle right there. You can move with your thumb to adjust your measurements. Technically, inside here, there's two flat pieces which you would use, and you'd almost clamp it down on those pieces, and that's what you're going to measure as the thickness or something of a piece. On the top, this opens as you roll this back and forth. So here you could open up and put this on the inside of an object and measure the internal diameter. At the very bottom, which you won't see in any of these pictures, there's a metal or a plastic rod that comes out, and it's going to measure depth. So one of the things that you would really use a dial or any kind of caliper, verniers the same, is that you could measure more things. With the micrometer, you're really measuring more of like a thickness to something. Here, because of its versatility, you can measure the thickness, you can measure the internal diameter, you can measure external diameter. This goes out to 6 inches on this one, which is pretty standard. And you also have some kind of a depth meter. So there's a lot of things that you can do with an actual caliper that you can't do with a micrometer. Although a micrometer is a little bit more precise, which is what you're after sometimes, than a caliper. Okay. And let's see, so here we've got another one. We are not at the 1 yet. You can see that this is opened, how that opens as we move. So we're not at the 1 yet, so it's going to be a 0.4. And then I'm just going to read the dial, and that's going to give me 58. Okay, and here you can see the bottom is now open, and that you would measure on these flat pads right here. Not too high or not too low, and that would keep you nice and even, and then right there you can see how that opens as we move it. So here we've got 7, and I know I'm at 7 because look at my dial. My dial is not quite, or no, I'm at 8 because my dial is just past the 0. Sorry, so I'm at 0.8 and then 0.3. I'm not at the 7 because the 7 would be over here to the left of the 0. Okay, last one here. This is one, well, I think I have 2 more. This one is another type of dial or caliper. So they're made in all different kinds. This one's just in inches. You can see the pieces a little bit more clearly on this one, which is what I like. Here's the here's where you would rotate or move with your thumb to get the accurate measurement to move it back and forth. You can really see how this opens up. And then here you can see the nice flat pieces that you would use in order to measure your object. And again, there's a metal piece that comes out the end. So when I'm looking at this one's all in inches, so I can see it's 1. And then here's my first piece. So it's still here. So it's 1.1. And then 2.5. So we have 1.125 on this one, and that's still in inches. Okay, one more on this one just so you can see. So here we have our 5, and then we have a 6. So it's 5.6. And then here we're going to look over here, and this looks like this is 4, 41, 42 inches. So again, just because it's a different caliper doesn't mean that you're not going to read it the same way. So just pay attention to that. If you would like to practice more with these photos, there's more and a few more. There's at the bottom with the answers. We're in week 3, and then you're going to want to practice those again because you're going to look at this in the homework for section 1.5 for calipers.